One more time. Come on.
This is the story of the Boyds Negro School in Boyds, Maryland. By looking at the story of this particular school, we gain a glimpse into what life was like at the thousands of similar schools like this one across the country. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when it was in operation, separate schools were required for African American and white children. Although only 27 miles west of Washington, D.C., Boyds was isolated and rural. One teacher taught 1st through 7th grades, with whole families attending.
The families lived in the 3 communities that the school served: Turnertown, Blocktown, and White Grounds. Turnertown was established by a woman named Emily Turner. She was given 3 acres of land by John and Jane Jameson in consideration for her services as a slave. Blocktown was so named because the foundations of the houses were old railroad ties. White Grounds was named for the white clay soil. At first, the children of the community were educated in White Oak Chapel, which was located about right over there. Later, the men of the community built a school just down the road.
The teacher was a pillar of the community, held in high esteem by all. Miss Lillian Giles, who taught for over 30 years, was one such teacher. Shortly before her death in 1994, she told her story. A young woman who had just graduated from a teaching academy and was about to get her first job.
I was in the hairdressing parlor, and Mrs. Hawkins said to me, "Lillian, do you have a job yet?" I said, "No. You have one for me?" I said, "If you give me one, I'll take it." She says, "All right. Can you go now?" I said, "Yes." I called my brother. I said, "Come and get me and take me to Boyd, Maryland." George said, my brother said, "Boyd?" I said, "Sure enough, do you know about Boyd?" He said, "Yes, I've been to Boyd several times. We used to play ball there." I said, "Yeah, come on, you ready? Jump in." Jumped in that car. It was a Ford. We got in Boyd. Mr. and Mrs. Duffin was sitting on the front porch. And Mr. Duffin said, "Are you the teacher that is coming to Boyd School?" I said, "I'm supposed to be." I said, "Now, who are you?" He said, "I'm Mr. Addison Duffin." I said, "Oh, hello, sir. I'm glad to meet you." He says, "Well, keep right straight on down the road, and you'll find the one-room school." I said, "What?" I said, "Oh, no." And Mr. Duffin said, "Do you have a place to stay?" I said, "No, not at all." I said, "Where will I live?" He says, "You live right here with Mrs. Duffin and me." I said, "Well, if Mrs. Duffin will have me, any children here?" You know, all of our children in the big cities. And I said, "Well, I'd like to stay here then." And I stayed there for 30-some years. And I was happy.
Well, she just a young lady. I mean, you know, she was young looking. And of course, in those days, she always wore a long dress or skirt. And of course, the old time shoes, you know, pointed toes. And she was just a sweet person.
Those days, the teachers would live with someone. And she just seemed to be so happy, and she would always greet us when we would meet her, speaking to everyone that was going along. She was just a wonderful teacher. That was all I can say about Miss Giles.
What she called me, my Bernice. That's how she would say, "You're my Bernice." And I was talking to her one day. I hadn't talked to her for a long time. And she says, "Who is this?" I said, "This is Bernice." "Well, it don't sound like my Bernice." I said, "Miss Giles, I'm 60 years old now. My voice is different."
did not have radios in those days. We didn't have a telephone. And what we had one of those wind-up Victrolas, and we had records, and that's what we would play. And we only had certain times that we could play that. My mother would let us play that, and mostly were hymns back in those days that we had to play. Everybody had a chore to do when they went home from school in the afternoon. They'd do their little jobs that they had to do, and then by that time it's time to do the homework. And then by a certain time you were in bed. You were in bed at 9 o'clock at nights back then.
We had a large family, and my grandmother, she made most of our clothes. And then it was stuff that, like, okay, my sister wore it. I got this small for her. I would wear it. They would hand it down.
You had no running water, and you usually, when it rained, you'd usually catch rainwater for doing your laundry. And of course, the boys would have to bring in wood, and the girls, of course, would have to take care of the chickens.
We had a dog. You could take him, if we was gonna play softball, you could place him in one spot, like the field or wherever. You want to put him on the first base or anywhere, he would stay there. He would catch the ball and would bring it to, he knew exactly who to bring the ball to. And he played high spy with us. Only thing, he would cheat. He would cheat. He would watch the children hide, and he would come back and take you to the children that was hiding. And his name was Prince.
We had several dogs, but we did have a pet pig too, because we raised hogs, and we had this pig that was a runt in the bunch of the pigs, and my father fell in love with it, and so did we, and we named her Spot. She had black and white spots on her, and makes no difference wherever she was. Always had to call, say, "Come, Spot," and Spot would come and lay down there. She wants you to rub her back for her. And when time comes, she was getting so old, my father killed her, and it just hurt us. None of us wanted to eat Spot because she had been our pet. But being children, and when the meat went on the table, we had to eat Spot too, as well as anybody else did.
Yes, Lord.
You come out the front door, you would see a creek running through the front yard. And down the path was a spring where we got our drinking water. And we had a garden, and you could see animals, birds. It was just a beautiful scenery.
Right across the field there, the house is still sitting there, the shell is anyway, where I used to live and walk from over there here.
I can remember back in about 1930, we had a blizzard. And at that time, I was working for a family. I used to go up on weekends to work for the family, and then I would come home on Sunday so I'd be ready for school on Monday. And this weekend, I went up, and this blizzard came, and I couldn't get home. They couldn't even get the milk trucks in to pick up the milk to take out, because in those days, they would use either a milk truck or else horse and wagons to take the milk out to the road to meet, so they could send it to Washington, to the dairies. And I was there for almost a whole week before I could get home.
Roll over. I'll sit right down and make myself at home. Please.
It was 8 miles where I used to have to walk one way. And I had 3 brothers and 1 sister to walk with me.
Oh, I'm going, yes, I'm going. Yes,
You could walk in the middle of the road just about all the way and never had a car to come by. It was a very, very few cars back in those days when we were going to school. The snow wasn't on the ground so deep that we would always go across this field. We'd go through the woods, and then we could get on, it was like a valley, because on the top it was a hill. And we would walk through this valley and we would go to our neighbors to get with their children, and we would get together, and then we'd leave there and go to school. By the time that we would get down in the community, Miss Giles would be probably coming out of her door to go down, and then she would wait for us, and we'd all walk together.
Well, a morning she would start off with, we would always have to sing something, hymn out of the book, and she'd play the piano.
I pledge allegiance.
We'd salute the flag and have the Lord's Prayer. And then, I mean, we'd start off with arithmetic. It wasn't math, it was arithmetic. And on one side would be like first grade, and then maybe in the middle would be another grade, and maybe in the back would be another grade, because it had come from first to the seventh.
See, some was on that side, and some were on that side. So she would teach some and give them some work to do, then she'd go over there and teach them, and then come back to us. Isn't that amazing? She would give us our spelling words to take home. I'm going to always be the first, because I want to make Miss Giles feel good about me. So she asked us to spell egg. I went to spell egg. I held my hand up like this. I said, E-Q-Q. I would be the first one. Yeah.
We had homework, reading, and I mean, we better bring it in the next day. If we didn't, then we'd have to sit down and do it. I think most of us were a pretty good student.
I mean, we paid no attention to the books. We were just glad to get books.
That was a book. I didn't know that they were hand-me-down books, so what they were. So it didn't bother me.
Sometimes we would sew. They had a sewing machine just like that. And we would sew things like towels. No making any dresses or anything. And the boys, some of the boys used to wear knickerbockers, if you remember what they are. I remember them. And just little cotton dresses, little shirts, skirts, blouses.
The older students would have the chores. It was like cleaning the floor, sweeping the floor, and seeing that the fire, if they were old enough, they could make the fire for the morning, because we just had a pot-belly stove, and that's what the fire was made in.
We just had to go up to the spring. It's a spring up there. As you come around that, the curve up there, we had water buckets, and we'd dump it into the cooler. But it always, she was sending two. She never would send you by yourself.
She would announce that it was lunchtime, and everybody would have to wash their hands, and they had what was called the wash basin. That's wash their hands, and that's so many would wash their hands, and then they pour that water out and get fresh water for some of the others to come. And maybe two kids could wash their hands in the same water.
In my family, because all 8 of us didn't go to school at one time, but like if 5 of us went, they would pack lunch in one big container, and then we would sit together and we would eat our lunch.
Before we would have lunch, she'd always have a grace. We'd have to say a grace before we had our lunch.
I remember one time she cooked some soup on the stove and would feed the children that didn't bring any lunch. She always had something to give them that didn't bring lunch. And then after we had our lunch, to go outdoors for recess.
The boys played baseball, and the girls used to play dodgeball. And if I remember correctly, I think they used to have the maypole. We used to wrap that. Jump rope.
I remember, vaguely remember one jump rope song. It was called Skip to My Lou, My Darling. And it was like this, someone on each side be holding the rope, and when they say skip to the Lou, my darling, whoever's jump would skip out, and then the next one would get in and jump.
Oh, well, we all played High Spy, and, boys and girls played that. They would be playing ball or tag, but very seldom we were together. Well, we do things here, and then when we win or when we have a game, group to win, then we go to Rockville for the county field day. Yeah, of a sports person.
I can remember my brother, my youngest brother Herbert, he was sweet on Mary Neal. They sort of had a fling going.
Mr. Taylor, who was our superintendent, he came up here to, look at the school and talk to us. And anyway, when he left, we had 2 boys who hung on the back of his car. Now, they knew better than that, but Miss Giles sure tapped them with the ruler. Both of them. She was very strict at times.
Well, she had a chair sitting over in the corner. And then sometimes she would, she would make you sit in that chair. And then sometimes she would hit you with a ruler in the bottom of your hands.
I came to school one day with my sweater over my shoulders. And she looked at me, Miss Roby, put that sweater on.